Will India be tuberculosis free by 2025? It's time to ask that question ahead of World Tuberculosis Day on the 24th of March. Remember, this is the deadline that India had set for itself. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today is on the challenges when it comes to the elimination of tuberculosis in India. Remember, the COVID pandemic to a large extent broke the momentum of the progress that India had made, and the progress continues to be significant. In fact, a 16% decline in the incidence of tuberculosis since 2015, no mean feat. But India was hoping that this would be much better and that by 2025, we could actually tell the world we are TB free. COVID complicated the responses of the public health system. A lot of diseases outside of COVID-19 got entirely neglected by the health system for reasons that are entirely understandable. But now, as the health system puts its pieces back together and we look at what's happening with the battle against tuberculosis globally and at home, let's introduce one of the world's foremost experts in this space. I want to welcome to the program Professor Madhukar Pai. He's, of course, the Director of Health at McGill University, also has a very important co-authored paper out in the Lancet on this subject just recently. And also, I want to say thank you to Nandita. Nandita is here with us to share her personal story as a tuberculosis survivor. She, in fact, lost her natural hearing because of tuberculosis, and it's always very important to put a human face to what could otherwise become just abstract discussions for those who are not in the medical field. So Nandita, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to get started with you, Madhu, if I can. One of the very, very important things in the paper that you and the Bhargavas have co-authored in Lancet is the link between undernutrition and tuberculosis. And I found that really, really important because we think of TB and we don't automatically think of either nutrition or malnutrition or rations or undernutrition. And our slides will show you in just a moment that actually your paper actually argues that if the state were to start looking at undernutrition and looking at poverty containment, looking at social protection, then we're looking at a significant potential decline in tuberculosis based on the modeling exercises that you and the Bhargavas have looked at. So talk a little bit about the link between undernutrition and tuberculosis.
Thank you, Barkha. I think it's an extraordinarily strong link. So if you look at all the risk factors for tuberculosis, undernutrition is the number one, and more so in India, because India has a massive problem of poverty and undernutrition. And so for years, we've known this, to be honest. It isn't anything like earth-shatteringly new for the
I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but look at the figure. You say action on poverty and social protection. This is what you and the Bhargavas write in Lancet. Can we just go to the next slide? Could actually bring down, based on modeling exercises, the incidence of TB by 84%. That slide will come up in just a moment. Undernutrition accounts for 34 to 45% of incident cases in India. So I didn't know that. I mean, that's a huge impact. That's not just some small number. 84%. Go ahead.
I know. I think what really has brought this undernutrition to forefront is not the background knowledge, which we always knew, is what Anurag Madhavi and Dr. Soumya Swaminathan and ICMR actually did. They went to this underserved community in India and actually gave food baskets to families with TB. And they did it in a beautiful, large randomized controlled trial, has never been done ever in this world. First of its kind, 2 papers published in Lancet recently with stunning results. In other words, when they went and actually delivered every month the food baskets containing of grains and pulses and oil and vitamins, they found that 95% of people just continued on to the treatment. Only 4% died, had a massive impact on mortality. And most importantly, when families received food, okay, one half did and the other half didn't, family members who received food baskets had a 50% reduction in TB incidence. It's like TB, food worked like a vaccine, quote unquote, with the 50% protection. I think this results has galvanized not just India, but the entire world of TB. Because it's easy to say that social determinants matter, but how do you intervene on it was not clear, right? Indian government had already started giving 500 rupees every month to everybody with TB towards their food, the Nikshay Poshan Yojana. That was like a cash transfer. But these colleagues went and actually delivered real food baskets on a monthly basis and showed that it's really amazing. It's like a vaccine, really. The question now is, how does India take this to scale, given the vast size of the country and the financial resources required?
And doesn't that change our entire understanding of tuberculosis? Certainly, when I was younger, you never thought of TB as linked to, food or nutrition. You thought of it as something that was terribly difficult to diagnose. That in fact, diagnosis was the big challenge of tuberculosis, and that when doctors failed to diagnose you for the disease, they'd say maybe you have TB. The link, actually looking at it as your Lancet co-author paper does, as a disease and a curable disease, of social linked to social inequity. I think that's a huge point.
I think the if you look at TB in the Europe, for example, 100 years ago, even when development happened, poverty went down, food security improved, housing conditions improved, overcrowding declined. Even well before the current modern TB therapy, you started seeing a decline, and we actually made that point in the paper. So whenever poverty alleviation happens, automatically TB starts going down. And food is one way through which it acts. Even China, for example, in 30 years, the remarkable China story of poverty reduction. Again, TB has gone down dramatically in China. So all countries that have alleviated poverty have seen massive declines in tuberculosis. I'm not saying we don't need medicines or diagnostics, Barkha. That is not the right message. We do need rapid diagnosis. We do need shorter treatments. But over and above, we need to layer in social protection and social benefits. And I think that's what the Lancet paper really tries to get at.
Absolutely. I didn't mean to in any way undermine or underplay the importance of diagnostics and medicines. And we'll come to a peculiar challenge later in the conversation about drugs resistant to tuberculosis. But let me bring in Nandita at this point. Nandita, tell us a little bit about your own battle against tuberculosis, how you fought it, how you discovered you had it, and what's it been like for you all these years? You actually had a physical impairment as a result of your TB. You lost your hearing, your natural hearing. You're able to hear us today through implants. But go ahead, Nandita. Thank you again for sharing your story.
Thank you, Barkha, for having me. So I had TB twice in my life. I had it for the first time in 2007. I was an 18-year-old college-going student. I had just started my undergraduate studies in Mumbai, and I was diagnosed with intestinal TB. Which was a relatively rarer form of the disease back then. And I did not show the usual symptoms that is associated with TB, whether it is cough or whether it is or whether it is vomiting. But I had a lot of stomach ache, nausea, and also I was having very rapid weight loss. And then I was diagnosed almost 3 months after I first showed the symptoms. And after that, I was put on medications, and I did get cured completely the first time around. I went on to do my postgraduate studies in New Delhi, and then the disease sort of revisited again in 2013, and I had a way more severe form of the disease after that. And it was this time around when the situation really went out of hand, and I had to be hospitalized for 90 days, and I had to undergo multiple surgeries in my abdomen. I was very ambitious. I was figuring towards starting my career, which is when this disease came, and it really halted my life for the next 4 years after that. And in the process, like I said, I underwent multiple surgeries in my abdomen, and then I ended up with the loss of hearing that happened after that. This was because of an injection that was given to me. But I'm glad that after that, we have worked, a lot of us researchers, survivors, we have work to see to it that that these kind of disastrous side effects several other patients in the future do not need to go through, which is why recently I had filed a patent opposition against Johnson and Johnson's medicine, a patent extension application for bedaquiline, and I was featured in the Time magazine among its 100 emerging leaders globally last year. So for this work, of course, it's glad that we are moving ahead with it, and we are doing. All of us are collectively galvanized to see to it that the next generation of whether TB patients or patients with infectious diseases, they don't need to go through what some of us had to go through.
Well, that's quite an extraordinary story, and bravo to you for fighting the good fight. But I want to understand, when you lost your hearing, you believe that was a side effect of a medicine and not the tuberculosis itself. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, it is not because of the bacteria, but it was because of the medicine that was given to cure me. So I was given this injection that is called as kanamycin injection, which is given to several TB patients who do contract a slightly severe form of the disease. It is known to be an injectable form of a drug that is given for a lot of infectious diseases, TB being one of them. And I was given this injection for over 100 days. Every single day, I used to be injected in my butt for this, and it was almost a week after I had completed a course of that treatment with kanamycin is when I woke up from one afternoon nap, and then I was told that I have lost my hearing suddenly. So we were never really aware of this kind of a very dangerous side effect that can happen. No one really. I don't come from a family of, say, medical doctors or anyone with any relation to science and medicine. But I think circumstances really pushed me into understanding, and now I think understanding what is happening. In fact, I remember I had reached out to Dr. Pai as well years ago when I started working in the sphere of public health. One of my first motivations was to really understand why this sort of hearing loss had happened to me. Because it didn't happen because it didn't happen because of a bacteria. It happened because of an external agent that was administered with the promise that I will be cured of it, and there's nothing after this. But that was the
Yeah. Well, incredibly positive outlook after what you've gone through. But Madhu, let me try and understand. Doctors might say that, look, we administer medicines in good faith. There's no malintent there. Somebody's reacted to a medicine. That doesn't make that medicine wrong. I don't know enough to take a position on this. What is your perspective?
Yes, so this is actually going to be a perfect segue to discuss drug-resistant TB. So
Correct.
there are 4 standard antibiotics that we use when people have drug-sensitive bacteria, right? They
Yeah.
have some toxicity, but nothing like what you heard from Nandita. That's a second-line drug. They're toxic. They are intentionally called second line because we don't use it for anyone unless we are desperate. And at that time, bedaquiline was not easily available in India. And I think the doctors must have said, this doesn't look like a curable infection. We need more toxic antibiotics to treat her. And kanamycin was and still is used in parts of the world for really sick people with severe drug-resistant disease. So it's like a reserve drug that is not widely or should be widely used. But globally, since the advent of bedaquiline and delamanid and newer medicines, there has been a complete shift in TB. We are intentionally now phasing out these injectable drugs. And that means we now have, and it's a miracle actually, and I wish Nandita had it years ago, we now have a 6-month cure, only oral medications, 6-month all oral medications with dramatic cure rates. And there are 2 regimens there. Bedaquiline is a key. Bedaquiline, predominant linezolid, and moxifloxacin, BPAL and BPAL-M. WHO has approved them. Many parts of the world are scaling them up. And India needs to do much more to scale up the 6-month oral medications. Now, if that had been available to Nandita, I don't think she would be deaf or she would be in need of any assistance right now. And I think that is the wonderful thing about TB today. We have very good rapid molecular test, extraordinary good tests which can detect drug resistance quickly, and we have the 6-month drug resistant TB regimen. This wasn't the case even 5-10 years ago, and I think that is quite dramatic. So, question for you, Nandita. So, your work has been really around trying to make this bedaquiline and the new regimens more accessible to people in India. Is that right?
Yes. So I think definitely, like Dr. Pai, so you pointed out that definitely we have seen a lot of improvement when it comes to TB science in the past couple of years now, and we are seeing better medications. I'm hopeful. All of this makes me really hopeful for the fact that we can see a day in the near future where the gravity of the disease will definitely go down. And yes, my work is a part of my work is centered around the fact that we are trying to see to it that there is an uptake of this shorter oral regimen. To give you a very brief idea, to take it from where Sir said, where Sir said is that there are previously the treatments you can imagine would go up to almost 2 years, and it could even go up to 3 years in many cases if you have a very severe form of the disease where you are resistant to, say, 11 out of the 13 drugs, which has actually happened as well. Your treatment can go up to 3 years. Now, cut to that, today we are seeing a prospect wherein the treatment duration can actually come down to 1 year or 6 months. I think that's a huge leap compared to where we were a couple of years back. And point to it, of course, is now that that we are seeing some progress when it comes to vaccines being pushed for TB. We know that even in India, I think it's Bharat Biotech or the Serum Institute of India. One of them is trialing a vaccine for TB as well. Even globally, there is Gates Foundation who is doing work. Wellcome Trust and Gates Foundation who are also trialing a vaccine for TB. So I think where I see right now is that. Compared to years ago, where I saw that science was really lagging behind when it came to TB, compared to, say, another disease like COVID, where we saw science literally galloping by ages. But today we are seeing that all we need is that will from the governments. We need a lot more awareness on the ground with doctors and patients about all of this new science that is going around for TB. So there has to be a sort of collective awareness among all stakeholders, and it should not just remain in the echo chambers at the top. So it has to really sort of boil down to the bottom level, the awareness that there is a lot of science that is going around for TB. So I think that is where I think is the need of the hour.
Okay, Madhu, I lost you briefly when you were telling us about the 6-month program that can now replace and phase out injectable drugs completely. So if you could just patiently, just because I missed that one brief moment, if you could just explain that again.
Yes, so WHO is now recommending that all countries phase out those toxic injectable drugs and switch to the 6 to 9 month all oral medications. And many countries have done that. For example, South Africa has completely banned injectable medications and switched to the all oral regimens. And other countries are doing it as well. And India has also shown an intent to do that. But I'm not sure if it's really widely available within the Indian health system right now. But I think this is a low hanging fruit. I really think this is one of the easiest thing anybody could be doing. Just switch to the 6-month regimen. What a relief it would be for people like Nandita and scores of people in India to have something non-toxic and to be taken orally. And then alongside, I don't believe we can't treat MDR TB in India or anywhere unless we first detect it. And I think you said that yourself, Barkha. Diagnostics, rapid molecular testing is the way to go. So there's another thing
Yeah.
that should be banned, and that is sputum microscopy. That
Oh,
is a
really?
technology that dates
Really?
back to
I think I
19.
think I think it's still pretty commonly used
It
from
is
what I
still
know.
commonly used, and it shouldn't be, because we have such better molecular tests available. I mean, I can detect TB on the same day with great accuracy today if I used a PCR test, which not only detects MTB, but also whether rifampicin is resistant or not. And that's like a marker for us on has drug sensitive disease and who has drug resistant TB. And India, Barkha, has fantastic products now. I was blown away. I was in Chennai recently, where we taught an entire TB diagnostics course in National Institute of TB Research, NIRT, and we had like dozens of Indian companies, all with very exciting innovations, artificial intelligence algorithms for detecting TB on the chest X-ray, scores of rapid molecular tests. That's, I think, primarily because India was really forced to develop capacity during COVID, right? It was
Yeah.
very hard to get reagents from other countries. Every country was hoarding it. So India did remarkable things in scaling up RT-PCR. Lakhs and lakhs got done. You remember that story very well. Now, why can't we harness that capacity that is already there within the country? The machines are there, people are there, reagents are there,
Yeah.
smart companies are there. We need to
Yeah.
redirect that towards TB now that COVID is no longer an emergency.
So that's a very interesting idea, to harness the RT-PCR capacity that we saw during COVID towards tuberculosis. It's time to take last comments. Nandita, if there's one thing you'd want the government, health agencies to change in their understanding and response to TB, what would that be?
So I think I wanted to flag a couple of things. One is, of course, the uptake of the 6-month oral regimen. I'm sure you must have read the news reports recently that there has been a stock out of very critical TB drugs. It's been reported in a lot of papers. So I
Yeah.
think it's very, very important that we secure supplies of very basic medicines. This is the first line medication, and we know that almost 24 lakh, at least 24 lakh Indians fall prey to this illness every year. So the stock out of, of the first line TB drugs is a worrying scenario, and it is something that we do need to get a long term solution for. So definitely that is one. So really, it's really about fixing this one very basic thing. That I hope does happen as we step into World TB Day tomorrow. Also, definitely the uptake of the 6-month shorter oral regimen. I think a lot of us have fought for it, and all we would want is that the results are actually visible on the ground for that. We wouldn't want that our efforts go in vain after doing so much for so many years. So definitely that is one thing. And yes, there has been a lot of talk about like I said, the vaccination for TB. And sir, as rightly pointed out, was that nutrition being a very, very key component. We are aware that the government is trying to scale up food security in India, where they have announced the scheme for providing free cereals to at least 80 crore Indians. So I think the all of that we I think there has to be a realization that nutrition plays a very important role, and we see it even at the ground level. Actually, if you just visit any hospital and you just go and visit any TB ward, the first thing they will tell you is that you have to eat properly. That's the first thing any nurse anywhere will first tell you, that please eat your food properly. You should not be skipping your meals. These are very, very basic advice that is given right in the ground, but there is realization right at the top now, with a lot of scientists and researchers now actually putting
Yeah.
evidence to what is actually seen. So I think all of that, these would be my areas on where we really need to get going.
Thank you, Nandita. Madhu, I'll give you the last word. Top three things you'd like to see change in the next year in India's tuberculosis management. Some things are going swell, some things need to change. What are those top
Correct.
three things?
So I think India should use the best in class medical treatments that we have globally. That means 6 month all oral rapid molecular tests, straightforward, very easy to do. At the same time, I don't think those alone are going to be taking India towards TB elimination. The social protection and the poverty, anti-poverty measures are fundamental. There, I think building on India's phenomenal rations trial, which really India led the way, what I think would be very helpful is India has, as you know, this wonderful PDS system, right? The ration system. If we can give extra rations to people with TB with pulses added, pulses, I think, are critical here, right? Protein is missing in most Indian diets in the ration. That together, additional rations with pulses could be a game changer for all people with TB. That will essentially bring down their mortality rate and help them complete treatment. These are all creative ways by which I think India can really push towards TB elimination.
That's such an important note to end on, because while diagnostics and drugs and getting the oral medication in is all important, the idea that tuberculosis is as much a social issue as it is a medical issue is something that I think is yet to be fully internalized, and that, you know, rations or amending what you supply in rations, changing it, tweaking it could make a difference is something quite dramatic. And your Lancet paper does touch upon it, co-authored with the Bhargavas. We'll leave it there ahead of World Tuberculosis Day. Important takeaways from both of you. Nandita, thank you again for sharing your personal story. And Professor Madhukar Pai, it's always a pleasure. Take care. Thank you, both of you.
Mojo Story has always made a commitment to its viewers to go to where the story is. And as you can see here, we are at the epicenter of the Israel war on Gaza. We are right at the front line, about 1 mile from the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli military gets ready with its tanks and its gunners to begin its final frontal assault that will take troops into Gaza. As we said, we are not like other organizations. We believe in giving you all sides of the story objectively and as much as possible from the ground. And that's exactly what we're doing here, covering the biggest global story today from the epicenter of the war zone. So please, we need your support. Support us, become a Mojo member, subscribe to us, spread the word, and thank you for your support.